The silver coins felt cold in Eleanor's palm. She stared at them, her fingers trembling as she counted. 3 shillings. That was the price her stepmother had agreed upon. That was what Eleanor was worth, for one night. "You will go to the Duke's chamber tonight," her stepmother said. Her voice was sharp like broken glass. "You will do as he asks. You will bring no shame to this family." Eleanor wanted to laugh. What family? The woman who stood before her had never been a mother. Not since she married Eleanor's father 5 years ago. Not since father died last winter, leaving Eleanor alone with this cruel woman and her 2 spoiled daughters. "What if I refuse?" Eleanor whispered. The slap came fast. Eleanor's cheek burned. She tasted blood on her lip. "You have no right to refuse," her stepmother hissed. "You eat my food. You sleep under my roof. You will earn your keep, or you will leave. Do you understand?" Eleanor nodded. Where would she go? She had no money, no family, no friends. The world outside was cruel to women alone. At least here, she had a small room in the attic. At least here, she had bread to eat, even if it was only the stale pieces her stepsisters left behind. "Good. Now go upstairs and make yourself presentable. The Duke's carriage will arrive at sunset." Eleanor climbed the narrow stairs to her attic room. Her legs felt heavy, like they were made of stone. Each step took effort. She wanted to cry, but tears would not come. She had cried so much in the past year that she had no tears left. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror. Her brown hair hung limp around her face. Her dress was grey and worn, patched in 3 places. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her stepsisters called her ugly. They said no man would ever want her. They laughed when she walked past. Maybe they were right. Eleanor washed her face in the cold water from the basin. She brushed her hair until it shone a little. She had only one other dress, a blue one that had been her mother's. She put it on carefully. The fabric was soft against her skin. For a moment, she remembered her mother's gentle hands, her kind smile. "I'm sorry, Mama," Eleanor whispered to the empty room. "I'm so sorry." The sun was setting when the carriage arrived. It was black and grand, pulled by 4 magnificent horses. The driver wore a dark uniform with silver buttons. He did not look at Eleanor as she climbed inside. The carriage rolled through the streets of London. Eleanor watched the houses pass by. Families gathered for dinner. Candles glowed in windows. Somewhere, people were happy. Somewhere, people were loved. The Duke's townhouse was enormous. It stood tall and proud on a street where all the houses were enormous. Light blazed from every window. Servants in fine clothes hurried about. Eleanor felt small and dirty in her old blue dress. A stern-faced butler opened the door. "You are expected," he said. His voice held no warmth. "Follow me." They walked through halls lined with paintings. The carpets were thick and red. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, throwing sparkles of light on the walls. Eleanor had never seen such wealth. Her stepmother's house was fine, but this was something different. This was power. The butler stopped at a large wooden door. He knocked twice. "Enter," a voice called from inside. The butler pushed open the door and stepped aside. Eleanor's heart hammered in her chest. She forced herself to walk forward. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The room was huge. A fire blazed in the stone fireplace. Thick curtains covered the windows. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books. A massive bed stood against one wall, its posts carved with intricate designs. A man stood by the window, his back to her. He was tall and broad-shouldered. He wore dark clothes that looked expensive. His black hair was slightly too long, touching his collar. "You are the woman Mrs. Chester sent?" he asked. He did not turn around. "Yes, Your Grace." Eleanor's voice came out small and shaky. "How old are you?" 22, Your Grace." He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. 22, an old maid by society's standards. Eleanor said nothing. What could she say? It was true. The Duke turned to face her. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She had expected an old man, someone fat and ugly and cruel, but the Duke of Ashworth was none of those things. He looked perhaps 30 years old. His face was handsome, with strong features and dark eyes, but those eyes held such sadness, such emptiness. He studied her for a long moment. Eleanor forced herself to stand still, though she wanted to run. "They told you why you are here?" he asked. "Yes, Your Grace." "And you agreed?" "I had no choice, Your Grace." Something flickered in his eyes. Was it pity? Anger? She could not tell. "We all have choices," he said quietly. "Some choices are simply harder than others." He walked to a small table and poured himself a drink. His hand shook slightly. He drank it in one swallow, then poured another. "What is your name?" he asked. "Eleanor, Your Grace." "Eleanor." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting the word. "That was my mother's name." He drank the second glass. Then he set it down and looked at her again. Really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You are frightened," he said. It was not a question, but Eleanor answered anyway. "Yes, Your Grace." "Of me?" "Of everything, Your Grace." He smiled then, just a little. It changed his face, made him look younger, almost kind. An honest answer. That is rare in my world. He walked to a chair near the fire and sat down heavily. "Come here, Eleanor. Sit by the fire. You are shivering." She was. She had not noticed. Eleanor walked slowly to the chair opposite his and sat on its edge, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. "Tell me about yourself," the Duke said. Eleanor blinked. "Your Grace, tell me about yourself. Where do you come from? What do you like? What do you dream about?"
"I don't understand, Your Grace. I am here to—"
"I know why you are here." His voice was sharp. Then he sighed and rubbed his face with his hands. "Forgive me. I am not myself tonight." He looked at her again, and his eyes were so sad. "Humor me, Eleanor. Talk to me. Pretend we are simply two people having a conversation." Eleanor did not know what to do. This was not what she expected. But the Duke was waiting, watching her with those dark, sad eyes. "I grew up in the country," she said slowly. "My father was a gentleman, not wealthy, but comfortable. My mother died when I was 15. Father remarried 3 years later. He died last winter. And the woman who sent you here tonight? My stepmother. She treats you well." Eleanor looked at her hands. "She treats me as she sees fit." Another careful answer. The Duke leaned forward. "Look at me, Eleanor." She lifted her eyes to his. "How did you get that bruise on your cheek?" he asked softly. Eleanor's hand flew to her face. She had forgotten about the slap. I fell, Your Grace. Do not lie to me." His words were gentle, but they held command. Eleanor felt something crack inside her. "She hit me," she whispered, "because I asked if I could refuse to come here tonight." The Duke's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "I see." He stood abruptly and walked back to the window. He stood there for a long time, silent. Eleanor waited, her heart pounding. Had she said too much? Would he send her away? What would her stepmother do to her then? My wife died 3 years ago, the Duke said suddenly. His voice was rough. Childbirth. The baby died too. A son. Eleanor's throat tightened. I am sorry, Your Grace. Everyone is sorry. But sorry does not bring them back. He turned to face her. For 3 years I have lived in this house like a ghost. I go through the motions of life, but I feel nothing, nothing at all. Then why? Eleanor stopped herself. She should not ask. It was not her place. Why did I ask for a woman to be sent to me tonight? The Duke finished her question. Because I am tired of feeling nothing. Because I hoped that perhaps I could feel something again. Anything. Even if only for one night. He looked so lost, so alone. Eleanor understood that feeling. She had felt it every day since her father died. But I find I cannot do it. The Duke continued. I cannot use another person to fill the emptiness inside me. It would not be right. He walked to a writing desk and pulled out several coins. Gold coins. More money than Eleanor had ever seen in her life. He came to her and held them out. Take these. Go home. Tell your stepmother you did as she asked. Keep the money for yourself. Hide it. Save it until you have enough to leave that house and start a new life. Eleanor stared at the coins in his palm. They glinted in the firelight. Freedom. That was what they represented. Freedom from her stepmother's cruelty. Freedom from her stepsister's mockery. Freedom to choose her own path. But she saw the Duke's face. She saw the emptiness in his eyes, the loneliness, and she thought about her own loneliness, her own emptiness. Your Grace, she said slowly, may I make a suggestion? He looked surprised. Yes. You said you are tired of feeling nothing, that you live like a ghost. Eleanor took a deep breath. I know that feeling. I have felt invisible for so long, like I do not matter, like I am not even real. Go on. You do not have to be alone tonight, and neither do I. Eleanor spoke carefully, choosing her words. But it does not have to be what my stepmother arranged. We could simply talk, keep each other company. Sometimes that is what we need most, to not be alone. The Duke studied her face. You would do that? Stay here and talk with me? I would like that, Your Grace. Something shifted in his expression. The emptiness faded just a little. Then that is what we shall do. He gestured to the chair. Sit. Be comfortable. And for tonight, you may call me Thomas. I am weary of being Your Grace. Eleanor sat, and for the first time she let herself relax against the chair back. Then you may call me Eleanor, just Eleanor. Thomas smiled. A real smile this time. Just Eleanor. I think I like that. He sat in the chair opposite her. The fire crackled between them. Outside, night had fully fallen. But inside this room, something warm was beginning to bloom. Something neither of them had expected. Tell me about the country, Thomas said. I have been trapped in London for so long I have forgotten what it is like. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, remembering there was a garden behind our house. My mother planted roses there, red ones, and pink ones, and white ones. In summer the smell would drift through the windows. I would pick them and put them in vases all through the house. You loved her very much. Yes. She was kind, gentle. She never raised her voice. She taught me to read and to sew and to paint watercolors. Eleanor opened her eyes. What was your mother like? You said I share her name. Thomas leaned back. His face grew soft with memory. She was beautiful, not just in appearance, but in spirit. She would walk through the village and remember everyone's names. She knew whose child was ill, whose crops were failing. She helped people, really helped them, not just threw money at problems. She sounds wonderful. She was. She died when I was 17. A fever took her quickly. Thomas stared into the fire. My father never recovered. He died 2 years later. I think his heart simply gave up. And you became Duke so young. Too young. I did not know what I was doing. I made mistakes, but I learned. He looked at her. Then I married Catherine. She was lovely, sweet. We were happy. Or I thought we were. Perhaps she was only doing her duty. I am sure she loved you, Eleanor said gently. Perhaps, but I will never know now. Thomas rubbed his eyes. Forgive me. These are dark thoughts. Sometimes we need to speak dark thoughts aloud, otherwise they stay locked inside us, growing heavier. When did you become so wise? Suffering teaches us wisdom, whether we want to learn or not. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The fire popped and hissed. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily. Eleanor felt something strange. Something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt peaceful. Are you hungry? Thomas asked suddenly. I did not think of it before, but you must not have eaten. I am fine, Your Grace. Thomas. No, you are being polite. He stood and walked to the door. He opened it and spoke to someone outside. Eleanor heard footsteps hurrying away. Thomas came back and sat down. I have asked for tea and food to be brought. Mrs. Harris, my housekeeper, will make sure we have something good. You are very kind. I am simply being decent. That is not the same as kind. I think it is, Eleanor said softly. Decency is a choice. You could have sent me away. You could have ignored my suggestion. But you did not. That is kindness. Thomas looked at her for a long moment. You see good in people. I try to. It is easier than seeing only bad. A knock came at the door. A plump woman with rosy cheeks entered, carrying a large tray. She set it on a table near the fire. The tray held a teapot, cups, plates, bread, cheese, cold meat, fruit, and small cakes. Will there be anything else, Your Grace? The woman asked. She glanced at Eleanor with curiosity but no judgment. No, thank you, Mrs. Harris. This is perfect. The housekeeper bobbed a curtsy and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Come, Thomas said, gesturing to the table. Let us eat. They sat together at the small table. Thomas poured tea for both of them. Eleanor took a sip. It was hot and sweet and perfect. She had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating. The bread was fresh and soft. The cheese was rich and creamy. The cakes melted on her tongue. Slowly, Thomas said, smiling. There is plenty. You do not have to rush. Eleanor felt her cheeks flush. I am sorry. It has been a while since I ate a proper meal. Thomas's smile faded. Your stepmother starves you? She gives me what she feels I deserve, which is not enough.
Eleanor shrugged. She did not want to talk about her stepmother. Not here. Not now. This moment was too precious.
They ate together in comfortable silence. Then Thomas poured more tea and they moved back to the chairs by the fire. Tell me what you dream about, Thomas said. If you could have any life, what would it be? Eleanor thought about it. No one had ever asked her that before. I would have a little cottage, somewhere in the country, with a garden. I would grow vegetables and flowers. I would have chickens, maybe a goat. I would be free to spend my days as I wished. Reading, painting, walking in the fields. She paused. It is a simple dream. Simple does not mean less valuable. Sometimes simple dreams are the best ones. Thomas sipped his tea. I dream of feeling alive again, of waking up in the morning and wanting to face the day, of laughing, truly laughing, not just pretending. You will, Eleanor said with certainty. One day you will laugh again. The pain will always be there, but it will grow smaller, and joy will find room to return. How can you be so sure? Because I have felt the same. When my mother died, I thought I would drown in grief. But slowly, slowly I learned to breathe again. I learned to find small joys. The way morning light touches the grass, the sound of birds singing, the taste of fresh strawberries. Thomas looked at her with something like wonder. You have suffered, lost much, and yet you still find joy in small things. How? Because if I do not, then those who hurt me win, and I refuse to let them win. You are remarkable, Eleanor. I am just a woman trying to survive. No, you are more than that. Thomas leaned forward. You are strong, stronger than you know. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. When had anyone last said something kind to her? When had anyone seen her as more than a burden, more than a servant? Thank you, she whispered. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Books they had read, places they had visited, memories from childhood, dreams for the future. The conversation flowed like a gentle river, easy and natural. At some point, Eleanor realized she was no longer afraid. This man, this duke with his sad eyes and his empty heart, was not someone to fear. He was simply another wounded soul, trying to find his way. The clock struck midnight. Then 1. Then 2. It is late, Thomas said finally. You must be exhausted. Eleanor was, but she did not want this night to end. Here, in this room, she felt safe. She felt seen. She felt valued. I should go, she said, though she did not move. Or you could stay, Thomas said quietly. Not as your stepmother arranged, but as my guest. You could sleep in the guest chamber down the hall. Tomorrow, I will have my carriage take you home. Eleanor looked at him. She saw no lust in his eyes. No ulterior motive. Just kindness. Just the same loneliness she felt. I would like that, she said. Thomas smiled. Good, I will show you to the room. He led her down the hall to a beautiful chamber. The bed was large and covered with soft blankets. A fire burned in the fireplace. Everything was clean and warm and lovely. Sleep well, Eleanor, Thomas said from the doorway. And thank you. For what? For tonight. For your company. For reminding me that I can still feel something. He paused. For being kind when you had no reason to be. You were kind to me first. Perhaps we saved each other tonight. Just a little. Eleanor smiled. Perhaps we did. Thomas closed the door gently. Eleanor changed out of her dress and slipped between the soft sheets. The bed was so comfortable, so warm. She felt like she was floating on a cloud. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about the Duke, about his sad eyes and his gentle voice, about the way he had listened to her, really listened, about the way he had seen her as a person, not just a woman his money had bought for the night. Something had changed tonight. Something important. Eleanor did not know what the future held, but for the first time in a very long time, she felt a small flutter of hope. Morning light streamed through the windows. Eleanor woke slowly, stretching in the comfortable bed. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned. The Duke. The conversation. His kindness. She sat up quickly. What time was it? She needed to go home before her stepmother grew suspicious. A knock sounded on the door. Miss Eleanor? A woman's voice called. May I enter? Yes. The door opened and a young maid came in, carrying a tray. His Grace thought you might like breakfast, miss, and I have drawn you a bath. A bath? Yes, miss. Through that door. The maid gestured to a side door Eleanor had not noticed. His Grace said to take your time. There is no rush. The maid set down the tray and curtsied before leaving. Eleanor stared at the breakfast. Fresh bread with butter and jam. Eggs cooked to perfection, sliced fruit, hot chocolate. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. Then she went through the side door and found a bathing room. Steam rose from a large copper tub. Soap and soft cloths waited beside it. Eleanor undressed and sank into the hot water. It felt like heaven. She washed away the grime of her stepmother's house. She washed away the fear and shame of the previous day. She felt renewed. When she finally emerged, she found fresh clothes laid out on the bed. A simple dress, but made of good fabric. It was new and clean and fit her perfectly. There were also fresh undergarments, stockings, and even shoes. Eleanor dressed carefully. She looked at herself in the mirror and hardly recognized the woman staring back. She looked rested. She looked clean. She looked almost pretty. Another knock came. Miss Eleanor, His Grace requests your presence at breakfast, if you are willing. Eleanor opened the door. The young maid smiled at her. This way, miss. She followed the maid downstairs to a sunny breakfast room. Thomas sat at the table, reading a newspaper. He looked up when she entered and stood immediately. Good morning, Eleanor. I hope you slept well. Very well, thank you. And thank you for the clothes. You did not have to. I wanted to. Please, sit. Have some more breakfast. Eleanor sat, though she had already eaten. A servant poured her tea. The table was laden with more food than 10 people could eat. I thought about our conversation last night, Thomas said, and I have a proposition for you. Eleanor's heart sank. Here it came. The real reason for his kindness, Your Grace. Hear me out before you judge. Thomas set down his newspaper. Your situation at your stepmother's house is untenable. You are being mistreated. You have no future there. I know, but I have nowhere else to go. You do now, if you want it. Thomas looked directly at her. I need a companion, someone to manage my household, someone to remind me to engage with life, someone to talk to. I am offering you a position. You would live here. You would have your own rooms, a salary, respect. Eleanor stared at him. I do not understand. Why would you do this? Because last night I felt more alive than I have in 3 years. Because you are wasted in that house with those cruel people. Because I think we could help each other. He paused. I am not offering anything improper. You would be an employee, a valued employee, but still an employee. You would have your independence. What would people say? I do not care what people say. Do you? Eleanor thought about it. Did she care? Society had never been kind to her. What did she owe to people who had ignored her pain? What would my duties be? Manage the household staff. Make sure the house runs smoothly. Mrs. Harris is wonderful, but she is getting older and needs help. Accompany me to occasional social events, but mostly just be here, be a presence in this empty house, and you truly expect nothing else. Thomas met her eyes steadily. I expect nothing else. You have my word as a gentleman. Eleanor thought about returning to her stepmother's house. The cold attic room, the stale bread, the cruel words and casual cruelty. Then she thought about this place, the warmth, the kindness, the possibility of a different life. Yes, she said, I accept. Thomas smiled, and it transformed his face. Excellent. Then let us discuss the details over breakfast. They talked for an hour. Thomas explained the household operations. He introduced her to the key servants. Mrs. Harris was delighted to have help. The butler, Mr. Winters, was more reserved, but respectful. "What about my stepmother?" Eleanor asked. "She will demand to know where I am. I will send her a letter explaining that you are now in my employ. I will send her payment for the inconvenience of losing her, what did she call you? Her charity case." Thomas's voice was hard. "She will accept or she will deal with me." Eleanor felt a weight lift from her chest. She was free. Finally, truly free. "Now," Thomas said, "let me show you to your rooms. Proper rooms, not a guest chamber." He led her upstairs to a suite of rooms on the second floor. There was a bedroom with a large bed and beautiful furniture, a sitting room with comfortable chairs and a writing desk, even a small dressing room. "This is too much," Eleanor protested. "This is what you deserve," Thomas corrected. Eleanor walked through the rooms, touching things gently. The soft curtains, the smooth wood of the desk, the books on the shelves. She could not believe this was real. "I will leave you to settle in," Thomas said. "Mrs. Harris will bring you anything you need. Rest today. Tomorrow we can begin properly." He turned to leave, then paused. "Eleanor?" "Yes, thank you. For accepting, for taking a chance." He smiled. "I think this will be good for both of us." After he left, Eleanor sat on the bed and looked around her new rooms. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Everything was clean and beautiful. And hers. She thought about the previous day, how she had stood in the attic, feeling hopeless and trapped, how she had climbed into the carriage, terrified of what awaited her. She had expected horror. She had found kindness instead. She had expected to be used and discarded. She had found respect and opportunity instead. Life was strange. Just when you thought you had reached the bottom, a door could open. A hand could reach out. Everything could change. Eleanor lay back on the soft bed and smiled. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely happy. The first weeks in the Duke's household passed in a blur. Eleanor learned the rhythms of the house. She met with Mrs. Harris each morning to discuss meals and household needs. She reviewed accounts. She managed the staff. But more than that, she spent time with Thomas. They fell into a routine. Breakfast together each morning. Discussions about the day's needs. Sometimes they worked in companionable silence, Eleanor doing needlework while Thomas read. In the evenings, they often had dinner together. Then they would sit by the fire and talk, just like that first night. Eleanor learned more about Thomas's life, his duties as Duke, the estates he managed, the people who depended on him, the weight of responsibility he carried. Thomas learned about Eleanor's past, her happy childhood before her mother died, her father's weakness in choosing a new wife, the slow descent into cruelty and neglect. "I should have been stronger," Eleanor said one evening. "I should have fought back." "You survived," Thomas said. "That took strength. It took cowardice. I let them treat me like dirt." "No, you endured until a better opportunity came. That is not cowardice. That is wisdom." Thomas leaned forward. "You are here now. You are building a new life. That takes courage." Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest. Thomas had a way of making her see herself differently. He made her feel valuable. She noticed changes in Thomas too. He smiled more often. He laughed sometimes at things she said. The emptiness in his eyes was fading, replaced by something brighter. He had been a ghost in his own house. Now he was coming back to life. One afternoon, Thomas invited Eleanor to walk in the garden behind the townhouse. It was smaller than the country gardens she remembered, but still lovely. Roses bloomed along the walls. A fountain splashed in the center. They walked side by side along the stone paths. Thomas's arm brushed hers occasionally. Each touch sent a little thrill through Eleanor. "I have been thinking," Thomas said, "about hosting a dinner party." "That sounds wonderful. I have not entertained in 3 years. People will talk. People always talk." Thomas laughed. "True. Will you help me? Choose the guests. Plan the menu?" "Of course. That is part of my duties. I am not asking as your employer. I am asking as—" He paused. "As a friend." Friend. The word hung in the air between them. It felt significant, important. "I would be honored," Eleanor said softly. They planned the dinner party together over the next week. Eleanor discovered she had a talent for such things. She knew how to balance the guest list. She understood what foods would please. Thomas watched her work with something like admiration. "You are wasted as a companion," he said one day. "You should be a duchess, running a grand estate." Eleanor laughed. "I am quite content where I am." But his words stayed with her. A duchess. What would that be like? To have true power and position. To never again fear cruelty or poverty. To be married to Thomas. Eleanor pushed the thought away. That was impossible. Dukes did not marry women of uncertain parentage, and no dowry. Women who had been sent to their chambers for payment. Besides, Thomas had made it clear she was his employee, his friend, perhaps, but nothing more. Still, she could not help noticing things. The way he looked at her sometimes, the way his voice softened when he said her name, the way he found excuses to be near her, and she could not deny her own feelings. She thought about Thomas constantly. She looked forward to seeing him each day. His smile made her heart race. She was falling in love with him. No, she was already in love with him. The realization came one evening as they sat by the fire. Thomas was reading aloud from a book of poetry. His voice was rich and warm. Eleanor watched his face, the way candlelight played across his features. She loved him, desperately, completely, and it was hopeless. The dinner party arrived. Eleanor wore a new gown Thomas had insisted on buying. It was deep green silk, cut in the latest fashion. She looked in the mirror and hardly recognized herself. She looked elegant, beautiful, even. "You look lovely," Mrs. Harris said, helping her with her hair. "His Grace will not be able to take his eyes off you." "Mrs. Harris." The older woman smiled knowingly. "I have eyes, dear. I see how he looks at you, how you look at him. He is my employer. He is a man, and you are a woman. The heart does not care about positions and propriety." Eleanor's hands trembled as she fastened her necklace. "It does not matter. Nothing can come of it." "Why not?" "Because I am nobody. He is a duke. There is a chasm between us that cannot be crossed." Mrs. Harris patted her shoulder. "Love finds a way, dear. You will see." Eleanor went downstairs with her heart pounding. Guests were arriving. She stood beside Thomas to greet them, introducing herself as his household companion. She saw the looks, the curious glances, the whispered conversations. These people knew who she was, or rather, they knew what she had been. The woman sent to the Duke's chamber that first night. Eleanor lifted her chin. She would not be ashamed. She had done nothing wrong. Thomas seemed to sense her discomfort. He stayed close to her all evening. When someone said something cutting, he defended her smoothly. When others ignored her, he made sure to include her in conversations. The Duke is quite taken with you, one woman said. She was old and sharp-eyed. Lady Pemberton, a baroness. His Grace has been very kind, Eleanor said carefully. Kind? Yes. Lady Pemberton studied her. You are not what I expected. What did you expect, my lady? Someone coarse, someone common, but you have gentle manners, good breeding. The old woman's eyes narrowed. Who was your father? Henry Bexley, my lady. A gentleman of Kent. Bexley? I knew a Bexley once. Good family, fallen on hard times. Lady Pemberton nodded. So you are not some gutter snipe. That is interesting. Eleanor did not know what to say to that. The Duke has been alone too long, Lady Pemberton continued. He needs a wife, someone to manage his households, someone to give him children. She looked directly at Eleanor. Someone, perhaps, who has already proven her worth. Eleanor's cheeks flamed. My lady, I do not think. Do not think. Just listen. I have known Thomas since he was a boy. I knew his mother. I knew his wife. The old woman's voice softened. He deserves happiness, and I think perhaps you could give him that. Before Eleanor could respond, Thomas appeared at her elbow. Lady Pemberton, you are not harassing my companion, are you? I am simply having a conversation, Thomas. Do not hover. Thomas smiled, but he stayed close to Eleanor. His presence made her feel safe, protected. The dinner was a success. The food was excellent. The conversation flowed. By the end of the evening, even the most skeptical guests seemed charmed. After the last guest left, Thomas and Eleanor stood in the empty dining room. Candles still flickered. The scent of roses filled the air. You were magnificent tonight, Thomas said. I did nothing. You did everything. You made everyone feel welcome. You managed every detail perfectly. He paused, you shine, Eleanor, like a light in darkness. Eleanor's breath caught. The way he looked at her, the intensity in his eyes. Thomas, she whispered. He stepped closer. So close she could feel the heat of him. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. Her heart hammered. Yes? He stopped. His jaw tightened. I am grateful for your help tonight. You have made this house a home again. Disappointment crashed through her. That was all? That was what he wanted to say? I am glad I could help, she managed. They stood there, inches apart, so much unspoken between them. Then Thomas stepped back. It is late. You must be exhausted. Sleep well, Eleanor. He left quickly, almost fleeing. Eleanor stood alone in the dining room, her heart aching. He felt something. She knew he did, but he would not act on it, because she was his employee, because society would judge, because he was a duke, and she was nobody. Eleanor went to her room with tears in her eyes. This was torture. Living in the same house as the man she loved, seeing him every day, but never being able to have him. Maybe she should leave, find another position somewhere else. Protect her heart before it broke completely. But even as she thought it, she knew she would not leave. She would take whatever time she could have near Thomas, even if it meant pain, even if it meant her heart breaking slowly. Love, she realized, was not always joyful. Sometimes it was a beautiful agony. The next morning, Thomas was distant, polite but cool. He ate breakfast quickly and excused himself. He had business to attend to, he said. Eleanor tried not to let it hurt, but it did. Days passed. Thomas remained distant. He was never unkind, but the easy warmth between them was gone. He avoided being alone with her. Eleanor threw herself into her work. She reorganized the household accounts. She planned menus for weeks in advance. She kept herself busy so she would not think about Thomas. But at night, alone in her bed, she thought about him constantly. She remembered his smile, his laugh, the way he looked at her, sometimes like she was precious. 2 weeks after the dinner party, a letter arrived for Thomas. Eleanor saw his face as he read it. He went pale. His hands shook. "What is it?" she asked, forgetting to be distant. "My estate. Ashworth Manor. There has been a fire. Part of the house is damaged. No one was killed, thank God, but..." He sat down heavily. "I need to go there. Assess the damage. Make arrangements for repairs." "Of course. When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning." He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. "Come with me." Eleanor's heart leaped. "What?" "Come with me to Ashworth. I need someone I trust. Someone who can help manage the situation." He paused. "Please, Eleanor, I cannot face this alone." How could she refuse? "Yes, of course I will come." They left early the next morning. The journey took 2 days by carriage. They stayed at an inn the first night in separate rooms. Eleanor lay awake, knowing Thomas was just down the hall. So close, yet impossibly far. The second day, they traveled through beautiful countryside, rolling hills, green fields, stone walls dividing properties. "This is my land now," Thomas said, gesturing out the window. All of this, for miles. Eleanor saw tenant farms, cottages with smoke rising from chimneys, children playing in yards. "It is beautiful. It is responsibility. All these people depend on me, their livelihoods, their futures. That is a heavy burden. Sometimes I wonder if I am enough, if I am doing right by them." Eleanor touched his hand gently. "You are enough. You care. That matters more than you know." Thomas looked at her hand on his. He turned his palm up and laced his fingers through hers. "You make me believe that," he said quietly. They sat like that for miles, hands joined. It felt right, natural, like 2 pieces fitting together. Ashworth Manor came into view. It was magnificent. 3 stories of grey stone, towers at each corner, formal gardens stretching in every direction. But part of the west wing was blackened and damaged. Windows were broken, part of the roof was gone. Thomas's face tightened. "My mother's rooms were in that wing. All her things." "I am sorry," Eleanor said. They spent the next days assessing damage, meeting with the estate manager, talking to workers, planning repairs. Eleanor proved invaluable. She organized everything, made lists, kept track of costs, managed the workers who would rebuild. At night, she and Thomas had dinner alone in the small dining room that was still intact. They talked about the day's work, about what needed to be done. But there was something else in the air now. A tension, an awareness. Thomas watched her across the table. His eyes lingered on her face, her hands, her lips. Eleanor felt the weight of his gaze. Her skin felt too warm. Her breath came faster. One evening after dinner, they walked in the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky gold and pink. The damaged wing cast long shadows. "I have not been here since Catherine died," Thomas said. "I could not face it. Too many memories. And now it feels different. Less like a tomb. More like..." He paused. "More like it could be a home again." They walked in silence. The garden path led to a small folly, a stone structure with columns and a bench inside. "Catherine and I used to sit here," Thomas said. She liked to watch the sunset. Eleanor did not know what to say. She felt like an intruder in his grief. She was kind, Thomas continued. Sweet. But we did not have what I thought we had. We were polite to each other, respectful. But there was no real connection, no depth. I am sure she cared for you, perhaps. But it was not passion. It was not. He turned to look at Eleanor. It was not what I feel when I am with you. Eleanor's heart stopped. Thomas, let me speak. I have been silent for too long. Thomas took her hands. When you came to my chamber that night, I was a dead man, empty, going through the motions of life. Then you sat across from me, and I felt something stir, something I thought was buried forever. You do not have to say this. Yes, I do, because I cannot pretend anymore. His grip tightened. I love you, Eleanor. I have fought it. I have tried to maintain distance, but I cannot lie to myself any longer. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. I am nobody. I have no family, no dowry, no position. People will say, I do not care what people say. I care about you, only you. Thomas lifted one hand to cup her face. You have brought me back to life. You have filled this empty house with warmth. You have made me want to wake up each morning. You have given me hope. I love you, Eleanor whispered. I have loved you for so long. Thomas pulled her close. His arms wrapped around her. Eleanor felt his heart beating against hers. She felt his warmth, his strength. Marry me, he said. Be my wife, my duchess, my partner in everything. Eleanor pulled back to look at his face. She needed to see his eyes, to know he meant it. His eyes were clear, certain, full of love. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Thomas kissed her then. His lips were soft and warm. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper. Eleanor felt like she was drowning in sensation, in joy, in love. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I will not be a perfect duchess, Eleanor said. I do not know all the rules of society. You will be perfect because you are you, and I will be beside you. Always. They sat together on the bench in the folly, watching the last light fade from the sky. Thomas held Eleanor close. She rested her head on his shoulder. I thought my life was over, Eleanor said quietly. That night when I climbed into your carriage, I thought I had reached the bottom, that there was no hope left. And now I have everything. You. This beautiful place. A future. She looked up at him. You saved me. No, we saved each other. Thomas kissed her forehead. You gave me reason to live again. You gave me love. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. They stayed there until stars appeared in the sky. Then they walked back to the manor hand in hand, ready to face their future together. The announcement of their engagement caused a sensation in London. Gossip flew through society like wildfire. The Duke of Ashworth was marrying his household companion, the woman who had been sent to him for money, the woman with no family, no fortune, no connections. Some people were scandalized. They whispered about impropriety, about how unsuitable Eleanor was. But others remembered the dinner party. They remembered Eleanor's grace and kindness. They remembered how happy Thomas looked. Lady Pemberton championed Eleanor publicly. That girl has more breeding and character than half the fortune hunters parading their daughters around, she declared. Thomas is a fortunate man. Eleanor's stepmother appeared at the townhouse one day, demanding to see her. Thomas refused to admit her. He had his solicitor deliver a message. Eleanor wanted no contact. If the stepmother approached her again, legal action would be taken. The woman left. Furious but impotent. She had no power anymore. The wedding was planned for spring, to be held at Ashworth Manor. Eleanor threw herself into preparations. She had help from Mrs. Harris and a dozen other servants. Thomas insisted on spoiling her. He bought her beautiful clothes, jewelry that had belonged to his mother, anything she desired. But what Eleanor treasured most were the quiet moments. Sitting together in the evening, taking walks in the garden, talking about their future. They discussed children. Thomas wanted several. "This house needs laughter again," he said. "Children running through the halls. Joy and chaos." Eleanor wanted that too. A family of her own. Children who would be loved and cherished. "I will be a good mother," she said. "I know what it is to be unloved. I will never let our children feel that." "You will be an excellent mother, just as you are an excellent everything else." The wedding day arrived. The sun shone bright and warm. Flowers bloomed everywhere. The small chapel on the estate grounds was decorated with white roses and ribbons. Eleanor wore a gown of ivory silk, simple but elegant. Thomas had given her a necklace of diamonds and sapphires that had been his mother's. It sparkled at her throat. As she walked down the aisle, she saw Thomas waiting. He wore dark blue with a grey waistcoat. He looked impossibly handsome. But more than that, he looked happy. His eyes filled with tears as she approached. Eleanor felt her own tears spill over. The ceremony was brief. Traditional vows, a blessing. Then Thomas was sliding a gold ring onto her finger. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you," she whispered back. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Thomas kissed her like his life depended on it. Like she was air and he had been drowning. The guests cheered. Eleanor laughed through her tears. They held a reception on the manor grounds. Long tables laden with food, music and dancing, laughter everywhere. Eleanor danced with Thomas. He held her close, guiding her through the steps. "You are mine now," he murmured. "My wife, my duchess, my love." "And you are mine," she replied. As the sun set, they slipped away from the celebration. They walked to the folly where he had proposed. They sat together on the bench, watching the sky turn gold and pink and purple. "Do you remember that first night?" Thomas asked. "When you came to my chamber?" "I remember being terrified. I remember thinking you were brave. So brave, even though you were afraid." He pulled her close. "I did not know then that you would save my life, that you would become my whole world. I thought it was just one night. I thought I would never see you again." Eleanor rested her head on his shoulder. "I never dreamed I would be here, happy, loved home. This is your home now, forever. You will never be cold or hungry or frightened again. I promise you that." Eleanor believed him. She trusted him completely. They returned to the reception as night fell. Lanterns glowed everywhere. Music played. People danced and laughed. But Eleanor only had eyes for Thomas, her husband, her love. Later, much later, they went to their chambers. Thomas had given Eleanor his mother's old rooms, now restored and redecorated. They were beautiful, filled with light and flowers. Thomas carried Eleanor over the threshold. He set her down gently and looked into her eyes. "Are you happy?" he asked. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she said. He kissed her softly, then deeper. Eleanor felt like she was melting, like she was becoming part of him. "I love you," Thomas said against her lips. "I will love you until my last breath, and I will love you beyond that," Eleanor replied. They came together that night with tenderness and passion. Two people who had been broken finding wholeness in each other, two lonely souls becoming one. Afterward, Eleanor lay in Thomas's arms. She listened to his heartbeat. She felt his warmth surrounding her. "I never want this to end," she whispered. "It will not. This is only the beginning." Thomas kissed her hair. "We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." Eleanor smiled in the darkness. A lifetime. What a beautiful thought. She remembered the terrified girl climbing into the Duke's carriage. She remembered expecting cruelty and finding kindness instead. Her stepmother had intended to degrade her, to sell her for a few coins, but instead, that night had led Eleanor to love, to happiness, to a life beyond her wildest dreams. Sometimes the darkest moments led to the brightest futures. Sometimes cruelty opened doors to kindness. Sometimes what seemed like an ending was really a beginning. Eleanor closed her eyes, wrapped in her husband's arms. She felt safe, loved, valued. She was Eleanor Ashworth now, Duchess of Ashworth, wife to the man she loved. But more than that, she was herself, the girl who had survived cruelty and found strength, the woman who had taken a chance on kindness, the person who had learned that she was worth more than anyone had told her. "Thank you," she whispered to Thomas. "For what?" "For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a home." "Thank you," Thomas replied, "for bringing me back to life, for teaching me that I could love again, for being exactly who you are." They fell asleep, tangled together, two hearts beating as one. Outside, stars shone bright over Ashworth Manor. The damaged wing would be rebuilt. The gardens would bloom again. The house would fill with laughter and life. And, through it all, Eleanor and Thomas would be together, partners, friends, lovers. It had started with one night, one unexpected night, when kindness had defeated cruelty, when two lonely people had found each other in the darkness. That night had changed everything, and the love that began then would last forever. Years passed, the manor was restored to its full glory. Children did come, filling the halls with laughter just as Thomas had hoped. 3 boys and 2 girls, each one loved beyond measure. Eleanor became known as a duchess who cared for her people. She remembered being powerless and made sure to use her power kindly. She helped the poor. She supported families in need. She made Ashworth not just an estate, but a community. Thomas watched his wife with constant wonder. She had taken his empty life and filled it with joy. She had taken his cold house and made it a warm home. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, they would return to the Folly. They would sit on the same bench where he had proposed. They would watch the sunset together. "Do you have any regrets?" Thomas asked one such evening. Eleanor thought about it. About her stepmother's cruelty, about that terrifying night, about the fear and pain that had brought her to Thomas's door. "No," she said finally. "Not one, because all of it led me here, to you, to this life. Even the pain, even the pain. It made me strong. It taught me compassion. It helped me recognize true kindness when I found it." She took his hand. "I would go through it all again if it meant ending here, with you." Thomas pulled her close. "You are remarkable. I am simply a woman who was lucky enough to find love." "No, you are a woman who was brave enough to accept love, brave enough to believe she deserved it." Eleanor smiled. He was right. That had been the hardest part. Not finding love, but believing she was worthy of it. She had been told she was worthless for so long. She had believed it. But Thomas had shown her differently. He had shown her that she was valuable, precious, worthy of love and respect and joy. And in doing so, he had freed her. Not just from her stepmother's house, but from the prison of her own self-doubt. "I love you," she said, "more than words can express." "Show me then," Thomas said, smiling. Eleanor kissed him, as the sun set over their estate, over their home, over the life they had built together. It had started with one night that was supposed to be about shame and degradation. Instead, it had become about hope, about healing, about two broken people finding wholeness in each other. The night that was meant to break Eleanor had instead transformed her life. The hunger that Thomas thought would be satisfied in one night had become a lifelong feast of love. They had saved each other. They had healed each other. They had loved each other. And they would continue to do so for all the days of their lives,